Super Bowl, of course, and Malcolm Butler with the game-winning interception we all remember in Super Bowl 49. Both could potentially be on Bill Belichick's chopping block. So Butler has a tender offer from the team worth almost $4 million on the table. But if he doesn't sign the first-round tender, he can sign an offer sheet with the team willing to give up a first-round pick if the Pats don't match it. Meanwhile, Hightower is a free agent. No person better to ask, who do you think the Patriots need more, Hightower or Butler?
I'm going to go with Malcolm Butler. And listen, both of these guys are studs. There's no question about it. Dante Hightower, he's the type of guy that, you know, he's a thumper. He's the signal caller for the Patriots defense. He's actually a pretty good pass rusher from the linebacker spot. But when you look at the league and where the league is at, where, you know, most teams are playing with 3 wide receivers, and you need cover guys out there to cover these guys. I'd rather invest my money in Malcolm Butler, a guy who, when you look at his story, this is a guy that was an undrafted free agent coming out of college and has worked himself into being one of the best corners in the National Football League. I love his attitude. I love his feistiness on the field. So if it were me, if I'm wearing the GM hat, I'd rather pay Malcolm Butler.
Well, for me personally, I'm going to go the route of Dante Hightower for a couple of reasons. Under normal circumstances, Damian, I would totally agree with you. But acquiring Stephon Gilmore, I think, goes a long way. Secondly, if you paid all that money to Malcolm Butler, and don't get me wrong, I think that to a large degree he's worth it, even though they're saying there may have been some slippage. That's not what I saw watching him. But even with Malcolm Butler, you got a Stephon Gilmore now that people say, you know, might be a little better than Malcolm Butler. Well, the Patriots ranked 12th against the pass last year, 3rd against the run, but 12th against the pass. So having Gilmore instead of Butler doesn't compromise that. And then think about what you just said with Dante Hightower. He's not only a guy that can be a pass rusher for you from the linebacker spot, he's literally the play caller for your defense at age 26, 27 years of age. I think that's a huge deal. He's calling those plays for your defense is what assisted Malcolm Butler to some degree. And last but not least, I think that with Malcolm Butler, what you have is a situation in New England where feathers have been ruffled. There's been a dissipated level of appreciation in his eyes emanating from the organization. And I think once something like that transpires, you got to think long and hard about whether or not this is still the place for you, because clearly he wants to get paid and he doesn't care where he's going to go, and you don't know what kind of relationship that ultimately produces with Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. The fact that you've got Gilmore, if you're able to keep Dante Hightower, your defense is still relatively intact. And I think based on that, you can afford to lose him more than you could afford to lose Hightower. I'd keep both if I could, but if I had to pick one or the other, I would roll with Hightower.
Steve Nay, aren't you kind of worried about the fact that the Patriots have Dante Hightower just out there in free agency? I mean, you know,
a little bit.
As a player, somebody looking at this whole situation, I'm thinking, why hasn't the Patriots, why haven't they sewn this up yet? What is it about Dante Hightower that we don't know?
Well, even though Malcolm Butler's restricted, they still have the right to match any offer or get compensation for him in the event that they lose him. So who's to say they wouldn't do the same with Malcolm Butler? If it were to anybody but the Patriots, Damian, I would agree with you. But this is the way Belichick does business a lot of times.
Oh, trust me, I know.
Yeah.
The answer is Malcolm Butler, guys. The answer is Malcolm Butler. You don't want to lose either. Stephen A., as you said a lot, and that's one of them. You don't want to lose either guy, but Butler especially. Hightower, you can argue, look, they lost Collins, and so there's more of a tipping point at the linebacker position than with corners because they pick up Gilmore. But the fact is they lost Collins and they didn't miss a beat. They won the Super Bowl. They can probably afford to absorb the impact of losing Hightower too, particularly the way the game is played now. Damian Woody mentioned it, the 3 wideouts. I mean, you got 5 guys spread out, and it's one-on-one matchups and great athletes just trying to beat each other. To have 2 shutdown corners in your defensive backfield, I mean, that's really where you want to be strong. The Denver Broncos, when they won the Super Bowl, of course you have Von Miller, you have the guys up front, but the defensive backfield was so excellent, and one of the reasons the Broncos were, in fact, one of the greatest defenses of all time, though at the time they weren't recognized as it going into the Super Bowl because they didn't get after the quarterback, say, like the 85 Bears or some team like that. But the game has changed, and you need the end of your defense to be elite. And here the Patriots have a chance to do that. And I think, and Damian, I agree with you, I think that's why Hightower is more exposed right now than Butler, because Belichick and the Patriots recognize that.
Whatever decision Bill Belichick goes with, I'll go with that.
I'm not going to argue against it.
Because I trust in him. And the man reloaded again. Damian, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Coming up, Stephen A's good friend Tim Tebow finally got a hit in spring training. Is this a sign of things to come for Tim A? Plus, not many people saw coming last season when Villanova won it all. But what are the chances they repeat this season? Seth Greenberg in the house will break down the Wildcats